Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Soundbites for Immigration Success. We bring you this podcast series so you can get to know your fellow consultant, hear their story and journey, what inspired them to enter the field, perhaps their latest challenge and how they're tackling it, and their advice for you or their younger self. At the end of the day, the idea is for you to get to know each other. My name is Monica O'Brien. I look after all things education and stakeholder engagement at KPIC. And today I'm decided to have Hannah Flostrad. Hannah, have I said your name correctly?
Perfectly.
Perfectly.
Thank you.
So, yes, and I am very excited to have Hannah here. She is an exciting voice and a newcomer to the profession. And I am very grateful because currently it is 10:30 where I am, which is outside Toronto, and it is nearly 7:30 in
Yes.
Vancouver. So she has gotten up early. So Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to sort of become an immigration consultant.
First, I have to say thank you for including me or inviting me to join the show. It is an honor to see all of the names who you've invited before, and I'm sure there's tons of other folk who will join the roster of speakers. I am so new. There are moments I'm definitely imposter syndrome of like, what am I doing? How did I get here? I am a career shifter, and I'm curious if many of your other guests are also like who starts off coming out of high school saying like, I'm going to become an immigration consultant. Um, I have had a 20 plus year span of my career has been in higher education in various different roles. As my very first one was as a tour guide, and that feels like it foreshadowed all of my other professional choices afterwards. So from tour guide to academic advisor, sorry, recruitment officer, admissions, then as an academic advisor in 5 different institutions across Canada. So higher ed has been my happy place for a very long time. And the last position that I was holding was my most recent position was as a career educator at Langara College. And I felt the call for a shift before all of the things that were changing in immigration. It was 2018. I was at a party and of a mutual friend, and a fellow guest happened to be an RCIC locally here in Vancouver, and just kind of went into her profession because I love asking people about their careers because as a career educator, that's just been my jam. And she kind of planted the seed. And I'm still in touch with this person. She was also the person who signed my document that says, she's known me for more than 2 years when I became an RCIC. And so it was very circuitous for me to become an immigration consultant in the sense of, what had to happen beforehand for me to take this path. I was finishing a master's program, so I'm like, I have time. I just my child was like less than 2 years old. I'm like, I have tons of time on my hands. I have time for more studies. So that's when the first meeting was in 2018. I started the program at Queen's in 2022. So it took that period of time for me to finish my master's, give birth, finish master's, and then launch into the Queen's program. So finish the Queen's program, and I almost didn't make it. I didn't pass my EPE the first time round. I had my husband, my biggest cheering fan was husband, but also the community that I started to build at Queen's. And one of them is my now boss. So she was my instructor for ICL 890. It's the last course of the capstone course of Queen's, the business management program. And Catherine Beer, who I think it was her first semester teaching, was my cohort. And I stayed in touch with her after the course was done. And when I didn't pass the first time around, I'm like, I don't know if I should do this thing. I should probably consider another career that's related to immigration, maybe. And she's like, you're going to kick yourself if you don't give it one last shot. And so I wrote the first one in September, licked my wounds in November when I got the news, and with her urging and my husband's urging, we're just like, okay, I'll do this one more time. I wrote it again in December of 2023, and I got my all of the license thing in March of 2024. So
Wow.
that,
So
yeah.
here you are. So congratulations. You're just a year in,
Hey,
but it's taken since 2018 to sort of get here.
yeah.
And your story is not an unfamiliar one.
Okay.
many your question was like how many of that I've interviewed have been the
Shifter.
similar path, and it's very, very similar. Um,
Mhm.
many have come as immigrants themselves,
Mm.
and so they've sort of been through the immigration process, and maybe they've listened to some of their relatives, maybe they've helped a friend, and some people just feel it's a natural fit for them. But it is not a typical career that people
Mhm.
choose out of high school or university, although
Mm.
it is a little bit of the data from Queens, which is one of the programs where you can take the immigration program. The other one is the University of Montreal. Um, there is a little bit of data now that there's a small number of people that are coming right out of university
Wow.
who are choosing to do this. So the goal is to make it entrenched for options for people as a career. Because right
Mm.
now it is a second, third, and fourth career for many in the profession. But I think your story, you well prepared you for sort of where you are. Because first of all, as a career
Educator.
shifter,
Yes.
yeah, and I wrote down the word career
Yeah.
shifter.
Yes.
You can sort of relate to your clients who are coming to Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and also you can sort of let them know, like you sort of can prepare them. It's hard when you get here. Or if you're already here, it's really hard to jump right in at the same level that you were in your home country, and it's a battle. So do you find now, in terms of what you're doing as you're that guide, do you find you also spend some time talking about the reality on the ground of what life is like here a little bit too?
Well, actually, so my last piece or the last when I shifted from the local college here in Vancouver, I was working predominantly with post-degree diploma students. That was the program that I was supporting and helping, providing the career education component. I was working directly with these students. So I was immigration adjacent in the sense of I didn't at that time, I wasn't licensed. I didn't have the knowledge that I have now of what they would need for their immigration pathways. But as a career educator, I was helping them understand, like, how do you tell your story? How do you navigate? You might have been a lawyer, a medical professional, a project management person, like a project manager in your previous professional lives. How are you doing that shift? How are you bridging that gap? How are you, networking and building your ecosystem of professional connections to be able to either leverage or, if it's a career shift or to stay in the same profession, how do you do that? So for my own career shift, for my own understanding, like what I bring over from that professional background is I think the resounding thing is you have to have community. You cannot do this alone. And that for me is what I sometimes, like I lean into very much, as a career educator and as now a career shifter myself is there's no way anyone can do this by themselves. And so having to bring that to, clients and saying, that's not been so much the conversations. I think it's very much immigration stuff, but like finding where the transferable skills may come through is a larger conversation that may happen afterwards because immigration when
Yeah,
this topic of immigration is like it's very front of mind and that's
yeah,
the thing. But that's what I feel I will bring as I grow in this profession is helping people understand through two different lenses. Their
yeah.
career aspect, which is what will help them sustain themselves when they have, found their footing after they've got their immigration stuff kind of cleared up, is that career piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you say you really had to use those skills and ideas that you were imparting on your clients, on
Students
your
or stuff.
education clients.
Yeah.
You had to take those on yourself. And it is true. It is all about community. I mean, no matter what field you're in, I mean, nobody should ever have to do it alone.
Mm,
But it's about leveraging those connections. So that brings me into kind of my next question.
sure.
Um, so you've been doing this a year and it took you sort of 7 years to get here you are by the time you're raising your little baby who's now 6 and finishing
Exactly.
what was your master's in, by the way?
Liberal studies. It was purely for my own profession, my own personal appetite of just reading the classics and diving into humanities and all these
Oh,
the context of why do we do business? How do we do things? It's because of, understanding the history of things. So
oh, I
that's
love
what,
it. Very, very interesting. So
thank you.
what for you has been a big challenge maybe at this stage of your new career, and how are you tackling it? Solve that.
This is a fantastic question, and it's actually one that I've had with Catherine. I will probably keep referencing my amazing boss and mentor and guide through this profession. The biggest challenge that, and we're not taught this in the Queen's program. The Queen's program is, I think, really solid. It gave me a really solid foundation. It was the first time I ever looked at an immigration application because I was born in Montreal. I was born in Canada. So this is my first instance of engaging with portals or understanding all that stuff. So I think the biggest challenge as a newbie to the profession is realizing, once we learn like case law and once we learn all of the meat of the profession, the biggest challenge I think is the opacity of the steps of being able to help our clients through IRCC's policy changes. Okay, so the biggest challenge I had like most recently was the IMM 5476, the use of representative form. That feels like a non-thing. It's just you fill in the form, you send it in. For a month, back and forth with IRCC agents saying, do this again. It's not valid, it's not good enough or whatever. And I was doing a switch. I was canceling Catherine and putting myself on for a client. And it finally took me sending a message to IMREP, the inbox email thing, to find out when it's not through the secure portals, an electronic signature is not sufficient. It needed to be a wet signature. It took me a month to figure that part out. So it's that level of the rules seem to say one thing and it's not coming through that the way that you said it on the website. So it's this puzzling thing. And that's also both a challenge, but also something that will, I think, keep my brain very alive and very alert to this profession is there's going to be puzzles. I love puzzles. And so this
Yeah, yeah.
will be
No,
just a puzzle upon puzzle.
yeah, no, and that, I mean, that was just a small example that you gave. I
Tiny.
mean, and that's part of one of the reasons why we have jobs, because we have to guide our clients through this maze and these puzzles. And
Yes.
your challenge there of sort of dealing with those things at both big and small level are it's frustrating. And now we hear with the reduction in levels, the cutting the staff, increased use of technology. So where do we go from here? And our job is to manage all that and mitigate. So how are you then? What's your goal in trying to solve that?
For me, well, back to this idea of the ecosystem, the professional array of connections that I have. That's one of the gifts that Queens has gifted me is now a huge intersection or a huge interweaving community from coast to coast. I have connections all the way from Halifax to Nanaimo, and in that as well as Catherine and her ecosystem of professionals. So it's building this community of other practitioners like, I don't know what just happened. Can someone please help me and guide me if you've had that experience? It's that having, a community of practitioners who
Well, that's
all need
exactly why we have KPIC. That's
that.
why
Mhm.
we all work together. You know, uh, Reaching out across the web.
Exactly.
Yeah, and please consider KPIC as part of your
Yes.
ecosystem.
Uh, yes.
Meeting, when you sit around a conference table and you get to meet those new people. I have to ask you, how did you enjoy your experience at the NCIC in Lake Louise?
It was very educational. I think as it was my first one, and Catherine even said, like, take a moment, don't do everything, don't try to pile so much on your plate. I didn't listen to her. And by the end of the 2.5 days, I was tired. I needed a moment to catch my breath because I tried to attend every single session. You invited me to be a moderator on a panel, and that was quite the experience to see the audience and to feel the heat of like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I will try to muster my way through. And it was impressive. It was really interesting to be in the same room as the movers and shakers and people who've been in this profession for many years and IRCC representatives being in the room. Like it was fascinating. It was just so
Yeah,
educational.
it's a real people, it's a real place to people watch as well. And to
Yes,
sort of see all the
definitely.
nuances and the
Definitely.
political things that go on and the lobbying that goes on and things like that as well.
And it was a great way to make connections. That was for me such a rich place to meet other people in the profession, and that was my biggest takeaway. Is just like now I have new connections that I didn't wouldn't have had a chance to meet otherwise.
Before we came on air, we were just chatting a little bit about working remotely, and you were telling me a little bit about the struggle of working remotely.
Yeah,
So how do you tell us a little bit about maybe a challenge around that and what you're doing to overcome that?
absolutely. I think, having shifted from being an educator and having just night, like I would have my class and I would teach, twice a week at this particular times and having it really set in stone of like those are immovable periods of time that I would have to do something for, my students or teach or whatever. That having to, and I'm kind of late at the game because I'm sure many folks who are working through the pandemic had to find their way through that as well, is really building blocks of time that are immovable and having to make that in my schedule now as working from home remotely fully 100%. So I've become very sedentary since being a grad student, and then even more so now working from home is as an RCIC. So I've signed up to a CrossFit gym in my neighborhood so that I have no more excuses of just sitting. I could if before finding my way to the gym, very easily spend 4 to 6 hours just in front of them, in front of my screen, not moving because I was like, I have to finish this thing. This file needs my attention, or I'm doing some research, and I was just down a rabbit hole. So really carving out and being firm about I need to do this for my future self of moving, of being somewhat healthy is now a very important priority for me. Sleeping better, sleep hygiene, trying to get into bed before 1 o'clock in the morning is now, a huge priority so I can be rested to take on the next day. That is something that I have to find my rebalance because again as a grad student I would sleep the latest hours so I can finish the paper and do the thing and my little one so it's finding
Yeah.
in that mess.
So when you graduated from Queens, were you the second cohort or third?
You know what, I think we were the fourth. I
You're the
was
fourth.
fourth cohort because it started in 2021 I believe 2021 or 22, so it was later in the fall of 2022.
Yeah. So it's a really it's a tough course. There's lots of reading, lots of challenges.
And I know that it's continuously, getting the feedback from students and, modifying and shifting things or adding, or I'm not quite sure, but I have a sense that from the very first cohort to when I took it to whatever cohort has followed me since, the program continues to adapt and to take
And to
to
evolve. Yeah.
evolve, yeah, to the
Yeah.
needs of the profession.
Well, I like the way that you're taking care of yourself.
Thank you.
About being healthy, time for yourself. And getting that mix of people, right? Especially because I mean, look, you and I are talking through a screen right now, although
Mhm.
our audience will just hear our voices. So I guess my final question is, advice to your younger self or advice to any colleagues who are just about to enter the profession?
This actually brings a story of I met a classmate, or he wasn't even a classmate. He was someone that I met through the EPE prep to prepare to write the exam. And he reached out like 2 years later saying if I would be a person who could sign his form to confirm that he is in the profession, that like if I as an RCSE could sign that form to confirm his identity. And the sad thing is, I hadn't seen him since 2 years prior for our EPE prep. So my biggest advice, and this is the advice I shared to that particular individual, is even before you start Queens, I think you need to start connecting and networking and building connections with people in the profession to understand what are the biggest challenges, what else is going on in this space. And so that you won't be reaching out 2 years later to someone who's almost a random stranger, almost to sign your document. This profession is so human. It is so human centric, not only with our clients, but with our fellow practitioners. Like we cannot no one can survive in this profession on an island. It is so interconnected. So that is my biggest advice is go make friends. Go talk
Yeah,
to folks who are in the profession
yeah.
sooner rather than later and
And
nurture
and
those relationships. It's not just about hi bye, like it's not just meeting them and running away. It's like let's keep talking. Let's how do you know, keep in
yeah,
touch.
like get to know people a little bit. Yeah, no, that's I mean, I think one almost has to be intentional about that. And it's a little bit selfish because you're making these connections so that you're not alone, so you can reach out to people. But also, you know what? The good thing is you meet friends for life. I mean, I have friends that I have made who would take their shirt off their back for me.
It's
And
you are
I
deserving of that, of that,
like,
Monica.
and it never was meant to be. It was just meant to reach
Oh,
out to somebody and get together and work on something. And before you know it, you discover things in common outside of immigration, or you have the same goals. And it sounds to me like, for example, you and Catherine, not only you employee, you become really good friends.
my goodness. She's seen me cry so many times at this point with just
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing and she's held my hand so many ways.
yeah.
You're doing such an important job with this podcast of truly building those bridges across, all the different guests that you've had. I have my homework is to finish listening to all of the other interviews of just all of these amazing people who are in this ecosystem. And I want to shift the word from the selfishness to curiosity. And I think that's what I bring to all of my conversations is a deep curiosity in the other person, whether it's a fellow practitioner or a client of like, tell me more. How did that happen? Where did that go? And where did that take you is I think an important part of I think being successful in this profession is curiosity.
Yeah, that's a great word. And I will use it as a descriptor when when I'm talking about you is be curious.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that extra 5 or 10 minutes with a colleague or with your client, you learn so much. And taking that extra 5 or 10 minutes with that client, you've got 45 minutes that they paid for, but that extra 10 minutes, you might gain something that is so crucial to their file or to their case.
Unlock something. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's sort of being mindful. I mean, we talk about making this we are a profession, and the goal is to, we want to be credible and have standing in the community. But within
Mm,
that, we have businesses, right? And
mhm,
we always have that conversation: are we a business or are we a profession? Well, we're both, right? You
mhm.
may have a business within inside a profession, but you have to be curious. You have to have that humanity. Um, that will bring us closer together and hopefully be good for our clients. So, Hannah,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I want to ask, do you have any final words of wisdom?
I think it's just reiterating that staying curious is so important in this profession. I look forward to many years and never retiring from this profession in the sense that it'll always keep me learning. I think it's a unique one for that.
Well, well, I love the idea of you always keep learning. And I can certainly say after 30 years, I'm continuously learning and mostly learning from colleagues like you who bring in a fresh perspective, your own background, and that mantra of always be curious.
Always.
Uh, Thank you, Hannah, for taking the time. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Monica. This is such a treat. Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for taking the time to hear Hannah's story. And hopefully, some of her words have resonated with you. And we look forward to seeing you at the next podcast. Take care.